All right, this is the Education to Action podcast by Common Power, and today we're going to be talking about the school board races in Texas.
Yep. Yep.
Massive victories for our side, and then we're also going to be talking about the terrible immigration policies of the Trump administration, specifically highlighting the South Africans, the white South Africans that got priority to come into the country. My name is Charles. I'm the executive director of Common Power.
Dr. Terry Ann Scott, director of the Institute for Common Power, an educational branch of Common Power.
Okay,
All
and this
right.
is our inaugural episode of this. We've got these two big things that we need to talk about, and they are seemingly unrelated, but they're two sides of the same coin when you kind of dig into some of the facts. We're not going to go long here. It's going to be a quick 15-minute episode, but I kept going back to the school board races in Texas because you used to live in Texas. How long were you in Texas?
I did I was in Texas. Oh gosh, I did my master's degree there. So I went there in 1996 and then left in 99 and for Chicago, then came back in 2003. And so I had my twins. My husband is from Texas. So I go to Texas all the time because his family is there. And I wrote my last monograph on lynching in Texas. So I have more familiarity than
and
a lot.
And fun fact, the first learning tour that we did with you was in Texas,
Yes.
right? The first full learning tour that Common Power did with you.
It was in December 2021 before we even launched the Institute. And we announced the launch of the Institute on that day. And the phrase education to action. So the title of this video series / podcast is Education to Action, because our intent in the Institute is to give you the education and then move you into the kinds of action that we do in the broader organization of CMP. And so you learn so that you can do.
Okay, so speaking of learning, these school board races this is a huge deal. This is something that you've been talking about since you joined us years ago. But we've got these major rulings out of Fort Bend, Katy, Houston, the DFW region, and Mansfield. And these are places where, for me, I don't know exactly where these places are. But as I was reading these out before we started, you were like, I know that city. I know this other city. Yeah. These are places where you spend a lot of time.
I spent time. I know them from the history. So I write about lynching. So I know which lynching. I know lynchings that take place in those spaces like Fort Bend and just outside of Houston and the DFW area. And then I know the changing face of those spaces with immigration. So I lived in the DFW area. My husband was from the Houston area. We used to go to Mansfield when we had a different lotion business and pick things up. So I know what they were, and I know how they've changed. And when you say we talked about school boards, since the beginning of starting with Common Power, we've talked about the importance of school boards, because one of the things that we know with school boards is that they can be won or lost by a handful of votes, and that the school boards have so much power to dictate what is going to be taught and what's not going to be taught in our schools.
And 2 years ago, when we were talking about this, it was maybe a footnote when it came to elections, and now so many people around the country understand the power of school boards on the lives of their children and grandchildren or their neighbors. They're seeing things taken from textbooks. They're seeing books removed completely from libraries, and this is one of the things that parents were fed up with. To start with Fort Bend School Board, conservatives lost 2 seats here. The board adopted apparently Texas's most strict book banning policies, and the voters ousted the most conservative members of that school board.
Good for that. And we were ahead of the curve when we talk about Common Power then in pushing.
Hey, we're always ahead of the curve.
I know, in pushing for the importance of it. And so when you look at a place like Fort Bend County that had been historically very white and conservative, and the book bans that we see are typically always of marginalized groups, so Black and brown folks and members of the LGBTQIA plus community. Those are the books that are getting banned. period.
That's
And
right.
so this is about whitewashing history and is about cementing, I mean, let's call it for what it is. It is about cementing white supremacy. It's about denying that there is any kind of diversity in society and also ridding society of any note that there is systemic racism. That's why something like the autobiography of Rosa Parks is one of the books that's banned.
Mm,
I
that's
mean, how
right. So
benign should that be?
that's right. And you mentioned LGBTQIA plus folks. And Katie, Victor Perez, who was the ultra conservative president there, he championed
Mhm.
specific anti-trans laws, or restricting the rights of anti-trans trans students there, and he
Uh-huh.
got booted in Katy.
Wow. Well done, voters.
That's huge. Greater Houston area, and
Yeah.
greater is this DFW? I don't know about the Texas areas. So
So
this is
Katie
Dallas
is
Fort
outside.
Worth. Is that what this?
No,
Okay.
Katie's outside of Houston, and Katie
Okay.
was when we lived there about 20 years ago. It was kind of an up and coming suburb, and so now it's become it's maybe 30 minutes from downtown, no traffic, but it's a large suburb of Houston, and Houston has become a magnet for immigration. And so in those
Mm,
spaces, you have African immigration, Latinx immigration, and then immigration from Asian American countries, and you see that both in
yes.
Houston and in DFW, the Dallas Fort Worth area, and they move to those suburbs. And so the racial dynamics and the racial breakdown of those areas are growing increasingly, people of color, BIPOC folks, and fewer white folks. And so it becomes kind of an outgrowth of what we see with immigration in these voting patterns as well.
Okay. So there's Dallas Fort Worth, and
Mhm.
then Mansfield. But I love what you're saying about this. I'm gonna risk this. I'm gonna step outside here and get some of the Seattle City into this. In the future, Terry, you and I will be on learning tours, and we'll be all around the country doing our work. We're going to go on a learning tour here in a minute. So,
Yep,
what you're
two
talking
days.
about when you say, this is how the country is, or this is how suburbs have developed. Also, common power. We go and knock on doors in
Yep.
these places that have changed the country. When we're saying this, we're not saying this because we read the books
No.
alone. It's because we go out here and we actually get out the vote and learn from these areas.
Yeah.
So I love this thing what you're saying about how immigrants have changed these neighborhoods, especially these suburbs, because the thing I always talk about is how um, conservative or Republican, and I mean classic, and not like the MAGA type right now, but how
Right.
they put in these business friendly laws, right? Big corporations, they do them a lot of favors, they give them a lot of tax breaks,
Yeah.
they drive down the wages and that kind of thing. And then you've got these corporations that move in to these red states. Well,
Yeah.
there's no employees that work there that are going to be able to build computers or build software or whatever. So they
So
have to
people
bring
move in. Yep.
yeah, they got to bring
And not only
either
do they
people
bring them,
from blue states or from
yeah.
other countries.
That's what I was saying. Also, what you see is that migration downward, and so you see people coming from blue states. You nailed it, regardless of color, whether they're white, BIPOC, whatever, who are carrying, by and large, more progressive values than some of the old
Yeah.
school Texans who have been there, and they also come into those communities. So yeah, and Texas gives all these tax breaks. They, to
Yeah.
all these corporations. What they are doing is changing the population and then changing the outcome of these elections, which also is why the Republicans are constantly trying to put measures in to stop people from voting. So
Okay. Okay. So this is so interesting because we weren't even going to go here,
I
but I
know.
love that because you never get a chance to talk about politics in the way that you are right now, and so
Nope.
this is great. This is why we're doing this. So
Yep.
people are really afraid that you see maps of the census and how reapportionment is going to give these southern states, these red states, more senators, and more U.S. House members. It's not that clean though. To your
No.
point,
Yes.
the reason why those people move in there, they're not just a bunch of MAGA heads that are moving to these red states. When
No.
Tesla moved to Texas, they didn't just move a bunch of Republicans. They
Mm-mm.
moved they moved a bunch of Democrats.
That's
down there
exactly
too.
right.
And so
Yep.
the people they're gonna elect, they're not gonna be, they're not gonna elect a bunch of Nancy Pelosi's, but they sure as
No.
heck aren't gonna be a bunch of MAGA people.
And a lot of them are going to, they may be Republican, but they're not MAGA Republicans. Exactly. It's the same reason why Georgia went blue in the previous election.
There
It
you
didn't
go.
just happen to go blue. Yes, people rallied and people like us knocked on tens of thousands of doors. They also had an increase in voter registration, and it had much to do with a return migration from the north into Georgia in the years preceding that 2020 election. It is
Which
changing the voting
you talk
populace.
about a lot of migration in your institute lectures and on the
Yep.
learning tours. Shout out to the institute learning tours. We're gonna leave for one tomorrow, next day, Wednesday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm leaving tomorrow.
tomorrow.
I'm
We're gonna
headed to
leave for
Selma.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. We have what, 40
Okay.
people?
Okay. Wow. Yeah, the bus is packed. I think it's like
Yep.
standing room only. I think I'm sitting on the stairs. Okay, so
I
let's
know.
move on to
Well,
this
it's
next piece,
so
which is the
dangerous.
thing that was the most infuriating to you today.
Oh,
And it so so uh,
listen,
in
I'm
these red
pissed.
states, they see these immigrants moving in. They see. So this is the flip side of this. They see immigrants moving into to their spaces, and actually
Hmm.
they're seeing the result of the voting change. Okay,
Yeah.
and so immigration is a big thing, and they want less. They want less black and brown people immigrating in. No Haitians, right? They don't want
No
Haitians coming
Haitian.
in.
Nope.
And so who do they want instead? And so Donald Trump puts in this policy where he says, and I wonder who he got it from, right? Where, white South Africaners
Yep.
can get immigration priority into the
Yeah.
United States.
Oh my God. It just makes me sick. And the reason he's saying that is because he said they are facing a genocide. He clearly does not know what the term genocide means. There
He
are
said that.
actual genocide. Yeah, he said they're facing a genocide. Musk said it too. That's exactly, you're right, who engineered that policy. And so because of that, they should be given passage. And so when people called the administration out and said, well, what about the Afghanis who you did not allow in? They said, oh, well, they retorted with, the situation is better there. They don't have to come. Well, what about places like the Sudan and other places that actually are
Yeah,
experiencing a genocide? And what about the
that's
people
right.
who are political refugees? Like, I'm Haitian on my mother's side. You know who else is Haitian on his mother's side? The new Pope. Just going to throw that out there.
Yeah.
But anywho, my Haitian
Your
family chat
cousin,
is
your cousin, the
my
Pope.
cousin. That's right, my cousin, the Pope. My Haitian family chat is blowing up because the hypocrisy associated with them trying to revoke the legal status of Haitian immigrations and the hypocrisy associated with them deporting Latinx folks who are here legally, removing the student visas from Muslim students, and yet giving passage to white South Afrikaners is so fucking racist. Excuse my language, but it is blatantly racist. It is unbelievable. And it really feeds into, I think, what a lot of these neo Nazis who are in the new administration think about the replacement theory. I mean, that is an example of how they feel that they are going to try to stop the change in the census of there being fewer and fewer white people. It
Yeah,
seems very
and they're
clear.
also gonna try to incentivize their people to have the right kind of people to have babies, right? That's the other side of this.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a reason why people like white nationalist organizations are so happy about anti-immigration laws. Let's be very clear.
Yeah. So I mean, this is one of those things where God, it's so tough because it's infuriating, and yet it's just it. Well, I'm not going to say it's a distraction because it's actually these are all like real things that impact
Right.
people's lives. I would say it distracts from the things that are these larger, more systemic issues, right? Like you're not
Yeah.
going to hear about the school boards in Texas because everyone's focused on the South Africans, and
Right.
yet the change in Texas is the thing that is gonna really, really help a lot of people. That's like a
That's
sign
the hope.
on the left that we're pushing back, that we're
Yeah.
winning, that
Yep.
people are fed up. And if that's true in Texas, then it's even more true in Michigan and Pennsylvania, right? In these swing states
Absolutely.
that are not as red, that
No.
the left is pushing back in substantive ways, and it's not hopeless.
No, it's not hopeless. It signals to others that this can be done. And it makes a real difference because, like you said, in the last couple of years, people are being confronted by now how important it is to have certain people on the school board to be able to safeguard truth, to be able to allow children to identify however they choose to identify. It's wildly important. And it also, with these new immigration policies, it signals to America, number one, that the administration wants to have a predominantly white society. We can go into DEI measures, all of these different things that they're trying to remove, and other things they're putting into place to suppress the accomplishments of BIPOC folks. But so we used to have a quota system in this country, and the quota system ends in the 1960s. And what the quota system dictated essentially that the highest numbers of immigrant people could come from white European nations. And it was President Johnson who actually signed legislation to undo that. And when he undid it, what he said was, and I realized he didn't have the best policy on Vietnam, but what he said was, when I look at the names of the people who died in Vietnam, those names come from all over the world, including Black and brown countries. And so we should not have an immigration system that favors white folks when all people are giving to this country. And that should stand true today, but that's not what the administration is doing.
I love that. So we're gonna wrap up here, Terry. And I know we can keep going. And
We could. I love that
I
you're on the
love
streets, though.
so many of the threads. I know. We're showing Seattle. Um, Also, we're always in the
Right.
move. We're always in the move at Common Power.
I know. I know.
What do you?
I'm not going to be at a desk
What's
on
your
my
hope
next
for
one meeting.
this? No, you can't. Now that I've been walking around, you're like, oh man, I want to walk around too. What's your hope for what this video series could be? Like, what is the thing that this is going to deliver that people will get from the institute, normal video
Right.
series or classes or courses?
So, number one, knowledge. Number two, knowledge is resistance. Yeah, we talk about knowledge is power. Knowledge is resistance right now. Why is it resistance? Because if you and I can bring to people information, keep them informed about what's going on, because people don't always have time to sift through it, and break it down for them, they are then armed with that knowledge so that they know that A, they can have conversations with other folks, B, they know you better vote in that school board election. You better go and knock on doors and get people to vote. We are showing them how impactful it is to have the knowledge and to be active in their communities. Education to action. And we're good at it, Charles.
Amen. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We don't make videos because we're on a journey to getting good. We've been good. We're making videos because we know what the hell we're doing. I love it.